What is up, cinephiles, and welcome back to Screen Kings. For today's video, let's talk about Netflix sci-fi thriller film called Spiderhead, directed by Joseph Kosinski. He's the director of the recent hit Top Gun Maverick, so a bit of surprise in there, considering that these two are very different films. Anyway, this movie is based on a short story written by George Saunders called Escape from the Spiderhead, and in it we have a convict named Jeff, played by Miles Teller, who submits himself as a volunteer in this state-of-the-art penitentiary called Spiderhead, located somewhere in Australia, where a pharmaceutical genius named Mr. Absnetti, played by Chris Hemsworth, administers emotion-controlling serums to its willing test subjects. Now, these emotions can range from being in love to being scared or terrified, everything under the sun. Now, this movie, it does not lay out the concept immediately. It lets you find out. So once the whole premise of the movie is within your grasp or within your knowledge, I find it actually interesting and intriguing, considering that this is something that's not too far-fetched, considering that we have things like love potions. So I'm not sure if those things work, but given the way that things are, I wouldn't be surprised if this kind of technology will be available to us. Going in, I'm expecting for some sort of an ex machina, considering that we have a remote dystopic location here with limited cast. But in general, I guess the challenge for this movie is to find its tone, considering that we have a lot of facets here. It could be a psychological thriller, it could be a satire comedy or a dark comedy. This recent TV show called Severance really did well in balancing those tones. Unfortunately for Spiderhead, it was a struggle. Now, this one came from the writers of the Deadpool movies, and I can see that they really love humor, dark humor in it. And as the movie went along, I felt like the movie devolved. It became more goofier by the minute, and in effect, as a thriller, the movie feels a bit watered down when it comes to its stakes and also the predictability of the plots. I felt like it went on the safe route and not really deal with its hard-hitting questions. Now, there are a couple of things in this film that contributed to its inconsistent tone, maybe when it comes to its funky soundtrack, which can be toe-tapping, but still I felt like it was overused. It was way too cool for this movie. And then maybe perhaps the performance of Chris Hemsworth. Now, don't get me wrong, I love seeing him in this new dynamic role as a villain. Any chance to shed off that Thor persona is something that I support. So he can also show that he's not just all brawn, he can be brainy too. There's something different that he showed here, that he can be disarming and inviting, but a little bit of sinister in there. Frankly, I enjoyed his performance. It's just that it leans more on the goofy comedy aspect compared to a dark comedy aspect. And I don't think it's the right fit for the movie, and I might be getting hate for saying this. I felt like his performance is a bit misguided, and eventually he feels miscast in the movie. Like, I can imagine Jake Gyllenhaal doing this role and eventually giving a more sinister vibe to the movie, which I felt is more right. It's just that when Chris Hemsworth is in the film, it feels like he's in a comedy and everyone else is working on a dramatic thriller. Now, Miles Teller here as Jeff is great. He has a lot of moments that provide intensity. Of course, he's the main character, and everyone else in this film are basically ciphers. So the most fleshed out character is going to be him, and he is basically the heart or the latch of the story. So we are ultimately invested in this character. Now, as for Jurnee Smollett, his character is a bit of a cliche. The love interest, of course, they're on the same boat and they will find solace in each other's company. But Jurnee's performance here is so raw and captivating that she makes the character interesting, and towards the end, the film afforded her to give some extra layers, which I felt like is a bit late on the game, but nevertheless, Jurnee nails it. Now, as for the execution of the satire here, because this film is dealing with a lot of big themes about science and control and progress and the illusion of free will, because basically the respondents here will have to say the word acknowledge, but in reality they don't really have knowledge of what kind of chemicals will be inserted into their system. So that seems a bit unfair. And since they're living a privileged life here, they wouldn't want to be thrown into the general population back into their jail. So they don't really have a choice. And I felt like the movie didn't really hit the nail when it comes to dealing these themes. It didn't feel dark and challenging enough, and there was just a conversation towards the end between two characters to recap in essence what is this film is all about. But whatever profound thing it tries to say towards the end, it doesn't really sit well with me, especially the theme of self-forgiveness, because of things that I can't really say because I don't want to spoil the ending of the film for you. Because of that inconsistent tone, there's not enough bite in this as a social commentary. Now, Joseph Kosinski, I admire his efforts to deliver something that's cerebral here, to show that he's not just someone who can do action blockbuster. But as of now, having seen both of his films, Spiderhead and Top Gun Maverick, his strength is definitely on this big budget movie, practical effects, explosions and all. So I would like to see him try again in the future, but in this particular film, I don't feel like he grasped the tone, put the film together into its cohesive whole. Anyway, the cinematography here is excellent. I believe he's also teaming up with the same cinematographer for Top Gun 2. And even though they're basically a bunch of indoor shots, they're still visually striking. But as a whole, I would say, since this film is based on a short story, I felt like it could have served better if they remained on the short form of medium, like an episode of Black Mirror, because ultimately this feels like a low tier episode of Black Mirror. Still compelling as a concept, like very promising, but the payoff is a bit weak because I felt like it went to the safe route. And so whatever intrigue and curiosity that this film builds in its initial act ultimately ends up something that's underwhelming and not completely memorable. Now, I gotta say, this is just an okay film. You can still watch this if you're looking for something to pass the time. But for me, I'm gonna give this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. How about you guys? Have you seen this movie? Let me know what you think in the comment sections down below. Also, if you enjoyed watching this video, hit the like and subscribe to me for weekly reviews of movies and TV shows. Thank you so much guys for watching. Until then, I'll see you all on the next one.